Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Warrior. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So some time has passed since the season 1 finale, and we kind of catch up with all the different characters and see where they are in the aftermaths of everything. Obviously, we start off with Assam. Well, let's start off with Assam. Not necessarily that's where we start, but let's start off with Assam. He's at these little fights, and he can't quite shake his loss to Leong. He can't shake that. I guess it's like that fear of losing, because once again, like ever since he got good at fighting, I think ever since he was trained by Shifu, he had never lost a fight before. And at least, like, especially when Victor was so close in his grasp and he'd been so full of himself, it's just when you get beat, it shattered you. And he seems like he pieced himself out together after, in the season finale, but even then he can't quite shake that shadow that Leong is kind of placed on him, and that's like it's always in the back of his mind. Like when he got knocked down, all he could think about is Leong standing above him, and it's just he's driven and consumed by that need to prove Leong wrong and beat Leong, but also beat Mai Ling, and that is going to be a big problem for not only Assam this season, but everyone around him, because he's going to be consumed by his anger. I mean, multiple times throughout the episode, you see him losing his temper. Like every other time, like he's seething under the surface, but you can see him trying to keep calm, but you can see like the rage burning in his eyes. And so he comes out on top in this particular fight, and he ends up in another one later on in the episode. But for him, it's just like, no, it's not good enough. I need to be faster. I need to be quicker. I need to be my strikes need to be more powerful. Like this person, I should have beat him like a lot quicker. It's like, well, you beat him under 3 minutes, but for Assam, it's not enough. And he's also spending his time going out with Atoy and Lai as they're doing their thing. So Lai's now involved in it, which figured she would be with her skills with the sword. So they go out, and Assam wanted to go out on his own, but he's like, right, either maybe you'll go out with me tonight, because they're going after these guys who are basically you get initiated into the group by bringing a Chinese scalp. Luckily, this guy was about to get killed, but they stepped in and murdered everyone. But that's one of the examples of Assam's anger, because even Atoy looked at the way he fought, and he was like, what? And it's like, I see it in you. But like I said, I do think that is going to cause a lot more problems, especially because Atoy wanted to kind of take a step back because they were dropping bodies too quickly. And so for her, it's like, right, the depths, I mean, she kind of she kind of did have a choice when it came to the business situation last season, where she ended up killing those two guys. It's like, well, there was a big enough gap between her 4 murders at that point. Well, like those 2 first murders earlier in the season and those other 2 later, to kind of protect our business partner, Patterson. But even then, it's like now those murders are getting closer and closer, because now it's like, we're drawing more and more attention. For Assam, it's like, right, you said that this is what you wanted my help with, but for her, it's like, this isn't help, because she recognizes Assam, like, you're not doing this for noble reasons. You're doing this because you're looking for a fight, and you're just trying to justify it by being like, oh, you're doing this for the right reasons, but you're looking for a fight because you're angry. You want to prove yourself because you need these victories to like inflate your ego, but you also need them to kind of sharpen your skills. But it's like, are your skills really being that sharpened if you still can't shake kind of that fear that lays on top of your chest because of Leong? Because of not only did you lose, you were so close to death that your sister gave the go-ahead for Leong to kill you. Like, you can't shake that. And until he's ready to really fully face it, I don't think he will be able to, shake that until he's able to face it. So it's so interesting how so many storylines ultimately do connect, because obviously because of all these deaths, it's putting a lot of pressure on the police department. Well, the mayor's putting pressure on the police department, and the chief is putting it on Lee and Bill. Bill's got enough on his plate because he's still working for the Fungi, and no one knows about that except for Chow. I love that when they go to try and bust Chow for some information, they're like bringing out some of his stuff, and Chow's like, right, you're under pressure. I hear you're kind of under pressure from many different directions. And Bill's like, what the hell does that mean? He's like, I hear things. And Chow knows not to burn that bridge. He's like, all right, I want to be on Bill's good side because it is useful. I don't want to completely screw up the dynamic, but also I know that that's my leverage. If I burn it now, Bill might snap and just kill me. So Lee's kind of confused about what's that about, but he could have dropped it in there and told Lee as well, but he chose not to. It's like, I'm going to hold on to that bit of leverage because I also don't want to, like, because if I piss off Bill, Bill's going to, like, come down even harder on me. This is him just trying to get information out of me. If I screw him over, he is going to not screw me over. He is going to fuck me over. So, Chow knows when to pick his battles. So I love that he confronts Atoy and it's like, right, your special hobby is cutting into my business. And I love that she's like, what's my hobby? And she's like, one of these days you're going to have to tell me how it is that you somehow know everyone's business. And he's like, my business is everyone's business. It's like, yeah, you know. And I guess it's like when you're trading in information and stuff like that. And I guess also now knowing what his history is, being a slave like he was, he's never going to go back. So he's never going to be in a situation where he can never find himself out of a situation. So it's like, right, I'm going to have all the power and influence and information I need to use to my advantage. That's why he doesn't really like the Bill stuff even more so, because it's like you're backing me into a corner. And the problem is Chow has been backed into a corner and that, you know, and he fought tooth and nail to never be that person again, you know. So Atoy respecting Chow, being like, okay, I will not get in. I will take a step back and kind of cool down a bit about the murders and stuff. And Chow's like, thank you. But she also points out that he has he's like, are you going to visit that someone? And he's like, tomorrow. I'm wondering who that could be. Well, because the way Chow made it sound like he had no connections to anyone. Like everyone he knows that he was a slave with is back in Cuba. So it's like, who does he know here that he's visiting? I wonder, could it be a relative that was sent here ahead of time? Well, because his parents died, didn't they? So it's like, could it be someone that he loves, or I'm wondering what that's about. That definitely seems like another interesting secret in the ever-evolving enigma that is Chow. The moment you learn a little bit more about him, and 2 or 3 more mysteries about him pop up. So circling back to Lee really quickly, he was on edge this episode, and even Bill's like, yeah, that's kind of not like you, because he kind of chewed out their like captain or their chief, and it's like, honestly, I really liked it because it's like he kind of deserves it, but because the chief was like, hey, the only thing I liked about him is his good manners, and if that's down the toilet, like I'm ready to like kick him out if need be. So it's like, all right, running his mouth, and Bill doesn't want to hear that and doesn't want to have to deal with it either. So it's like, make my job easier by keeping your cool. So it seems like the way he talks about it, it's like, right, it's been, I think he said it's been 2 months, so I guess it's been 2 months since season 1's finale, that Lee's still getting the headaches. And the moment Bill referenced the medicine, and he was kind of like cagey about it, he was like, yeah, I was like, because it seems like he's dealing with his issues with alcohol, you know, like anyone would at this point in time, especially at this point in history. But I wonder, does he not take the medication he's supposed to? I wonder, does he have like an addiction where it's like, you know, where Bill has gambling's his vice? Like, I wonder, are we going to find out that Lee has like a drug issue, or like why it seemed like he was cagey around like, oh yeah, any medicine he's really taking. I'm like, are you really not like handling it? Or maybe some stuff from his past has kind of reared its head in these 2 months, or maybe it is just maybe the blow to his head. I mean, you know, and Lee even said to himself like, oh, the doctor says there's not a lot we know about brain, like, you know, damage and stuff like that. And part of me is also wondering, is like, well, we know like so much is controlled by the brain, and we know that brain head trauma can cause personality changes. So maybe there's something kind of on that front, or like I said, I also don't know if I 100% believe him about some of the stuff he's bringing up about the doctor. So Lee's definitely going to be someone we're going to have to keep an even closer eye on this season to see what his circumstances end up being. As for our ever-warring Tongs who are currently at peace, Father June is taking everything with stride, because he's like, right, it's only a matter of time before, like, the Long Z have to, like, either the Long Z does it or the Feng Kai will break off that relationship, like, because one of them's going to screw it up at some point in time, and that will be our moment to strike. But June doesn't want to wait around. But Father June's like, we don't want to do anything that could piss anyone off because we got to wait for the right moment, and then we'll have the backing of the 6 companies. So I can only assume, like, I don't know if that's like one group that's led by, like, maybe it's a group that's like a culmination of 6 groups. Now, it could either be 6 separate groups is what I'm trying to say, or it's one group with 6 different heads from 6 different groups. I'm curious how that gets delineated. Like, going through the point of calling them the 6 company feels like a 6-head leadership, but we just don't know if they're just separate or whether they're all one entity led by 6 group of people. But Father June doesn't want to get on the bad side, but Young June's like, who cares about them? Like, because it's like, right, that's China stuff. Like, who cares? Like, that doesn't have any effect on us. But it's like, it carries a lot of weight because I'm sure they could come here and kind of completely and utterly screw things up and kind of take over, which I'm assuming dealing with the 6 companies is probably going to be like either like that's going to be the main threat and issue this season, or it's going to be something that builds up in the background until it becomes a season 3 issue. We'll have to wait and see. But Father June's position, especially the way he kind of puts Young June in his place, and Young June, it's like, because in his eyes, it's like, my father's lost a step ever since my link and the fungi like set off that bomb. He hasn't been the same, you know? So it's like, he can't stand up to his father like he wants to. So him and I saw him talk about it later on about how the molasses they're getting isn't coming from China. So they've got a local source, and because of that, they're able to get it on a cheaper, and so they're able to sell it for cheaper. So that means that they're not spending as much money as they're not spending nearly as much money as the Hopway, but also they basically stole all of their customers as well. So they're the ones making the profit. I mean, even to the point that, and this kind of shows like Mai Ling in her certain light, because I think she wants to, like, yeah, I've got this power and everything, but I want to do good with it. And I don't know whether it's just because of what she had to witness, maybe it's just their own family circumstances, but when she saw those fruit vendors who are like, the wife is sick, and it's like, right, she doesn't want to go to the doctor because she said 2 of us need to run this shop. So Mai Ling bought the entire stock they had, and it's like, right, go take your wife to the doctor. So it shows like, right, Mai Ling has good that she wants to do with that power, but obviously the whole thing, like, just seeing her face just rubs Assam the wrong way, because him and Young June walk right past him, and it's just kind of like, yeah, that same look isn't in his eye. So when they meet later on, he calls her out for everything. And it's like, right, you ordered my death. She's like, I tried to get you out of this, but you didn't want to listen. And he's like, and she's like, right, you went crawling back to the Hopway. They don't care about you. They were going to leave you for dead. They tossed you out, and yet you went back to them. And it's because he's got his own plans and what he wants to do. I guess he needs the Hopway to be his cover to do what he's doing for Assam. I mean, with Atoy, but Assam's got his own. Well, he doesn't even really fully have his own goals because he's wandering. He's wandering around trying to figure things out, figure his path out, because it's still not fully clear to him. Because even now, it's not like he's found a cause that he's willing to fight and die for like Leong is. He had purpose. Even Assam right now, even with helping out Atoy and Lai, he's still purposeless, you know? But that conversation he had with Mai Ling is just kind of like, right, it's like, oh, the Tong is weak. I mean, the Hopway is weak. Like, you should come. We could be together. It's like, I kind of wondered if that was where he was going to go, but it's like, why would I join the side of my sister when she tried to have me killed? It's like, yeah, that could have been a different story if you had offered him earlier on. But now it's like, you know, it's a different story when the Hopway let him go. He could have joined another Tong, but he would have had to suffer the ramifications of that. But Mai Ling would have been happy to have him amongst her ranks despite their complications. But for him, it's like, nah, we're past that. I want to burn down what you have. You better watch your back. And she's like, oh, who's going to take over the running? Like, Father June won't be around forever, so who's going to run the Hopway? And it's like, oh, Young June, you? And he's like, if I have to, you know. But it's like, once again, it's all him being driven by his need for revenge against her. You know, he wants to pay her back, and that's his only motivation. So, you know, it's like, right, you're going to wish you would have killed me before. And she's like, right, there's always tomorrow. But despite saying that, when she's with Leong, it's like, you should have seen that look in my brother's eyes, like how much he hates me. And it's like, well, your brother's a good fighter, but he's not a leader like you. But for her, it's like, I remember when my brother got here, I was so angry at him because he thought he knew me. And now she's wondering, like, maybe I didn't know him either. I don't know him either. That is just, that, because she's so certain that he was the same brother she knew, just like he thought she was the same sister. But it's like, the thing is, your paths have led you down different roads, and you've separately, and also separately, your paths have kind of put you on, well, the paths that you want, but also your intersections with each other's paths have like altered your paths too. And so because of that fight last season in episode 9, like, it's changed us some, and that's going to be kind of like, he's definitely no longer the brother she knew anymore either. For her, it's like, right, we've got to be careful going forward because she's going to be weary of her brother. But also, like, we haven't fully dived into like the Feng Hai situation, and considering how everything ended for the Long Zi last season. So we haven't really dived into that Feng Hai situation. We did see the leader of the Feng Hai in his interaction with Bill, because Bill's like, right, I paid off my debt. It's like, no. This isn't about paying off your debt. You work for us forever. They're not going to let him go. And it's like, don't worry, you're kind of it's not like you're not getting anything out of it. He ends up getting some money in return. So he is getting paid for, so he is kind of a lapdog to them, which obviously he's hiding that from his wife. He promised he'd kind of deal with it, which he kind of did, but probably, I'd say things are probably slightly worse, not fully worse, but slightly worse than what they were before because of him working for the Feng Hai. And, his wife can tell, like, he's lying when he's like, oh, yeah, I helped out, around, like, the slaughterhouse. And the guy, like, because I check around there, every once in a while, gives me some extra steak and stuff. But she can tell when he's lying. It's like she's known him enough. That's how she knew something was wrong before. It's like, you couldn't lie to your wife beforehand. Like, she caught you lying and knew you were lying last season. What makes you think your lies are going to sit well with her this season? But it's like, we'll see, because that's all going to come to a head eventually. So, but like I said, the Feng Hai, we haven't really gotten a peek into what they're up to. We just saw them kind of like, I guess, basking in kind of their position, and I'm sure negotiations was like last season, in the season finale, kind of skew more in their favor. So Longzi had no choice but to comply, but maybe Mai Ling is waiting for her opportunity to kind of strike on that front, while also trying to keep the peace with the Hop Wei. Because I think even if she does stuff to set up the Feng Hai to go against the Hop Wei, it's probably going to be a situation of they'll probably suffer the blame as well. So she probably has to be even more careful on that front. It's a delicate three-way balance between all three tongs. Another element to this episode revolves around Penelope. She has fully taken over her father's company, much to her husband's dismay. He's not liking it, and obviously because she's not falling in line like she's supposed to. And so, especially because Meriwether wants to try and buy the business, but for her, it's like, I'm going to keep my father's business. That's what he would want. It's Mercer, is his legacy, and I'm not going to let that go, despite everyone kind of pushing for it. Well, because the reason why the mayor even cares at all, it's like, fine, do whatever you want to. Once again, I figured you're going to have an issue because you're a woman running a company, like you're, in a male-dominated field, like that's going to be an issue. But she's also hiring Chinese labor because she's trying to help out and give back in her own way. But that puts her in animosity with the mayor, which her sister Sophie is talking all kinds of shit, being like, Samuel, and saying it was such a sarcastic term. I was like, man, she is such a dick for that, But it turns out their other sister was kind of sent away, like almost like a boarding school type of thing. But it's like, no, she made that choice, so Sophie's staying behind. And obviously she's in that position where she's kind of like, the suitors are kind of coming around type of situation. Which you would think because of her own circumstances, Penelope wouldn't really push that. But to be fair, it's like, it's a different, it's like, right, she's probably not going to force her to, because her circumstances are different. I would never put you in a situation I'm in. But hey, if there's suitors around, people who are good, why don't you take them up on? Because I'd rather you be with someone that's decent and good rather than just being forced to be with someone you can't stand. Because even Sophie kind of threw in her face like, oh, like, take your own advice, about like, finding someone right, or, whatever. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, and even Sophie apologized. It's like, I'm sorry, that was very mean of me to say. Because the moment she showed up at the graveyard earlier at the beginning of the episode with Leary, I was like, that's got to be one of Penelope's sisters. Like, especially because she was like, yeah, my father's grave and everything. It's like, well, there's at least because the way she was talking about like, oh, so many flowers are left on my father's grave. It's like, he has to be someone of wealth and importance to have that many flowers on his grave. Because tying that in with Leary, we found out about Leary's circumstances. He's a man that all he has to live for is this fight. So he's going to look after everyone else, because I guess maybe when the time came, no one was looking out for him. Because 8 years ago, his wife and both of his sons died from smallpox. I mean, probably no one could do, but it's like, they had just come from New York and came to San Francisco all those years ago, 8 years ago, and lost him then when the wave of smallpox hit. So I guess like all he has for him is the fight, that he's going to look out after other people's families because he lost his family and he never wants anyone else to have to go through that. So obviously a lot of Irish people got jobs, but he's making sure like, hey, pay your dues. Because I guess how about to say, is he getting a cut of the paychecks? But it's like, no, it's most likely he's putting it all together in like a rainy day fund, so that when everyone is on their down luck and don't have enough money to pay rent or help feed their family, he has money in reserve. So it's like, right, whatever money you're making, you got to give some kickback. Which I love one of the guys being like, what? I only started working last week. He's like, yes, but there's some people who are not as fortunate as you who are out of work, and who knows, tomorrow could be a different day. You could be on the other end of things without a job. So kind of made a point of, you're going to like chip in. And he's also got those explosives. I feel stupid because I'm like, are we supposed to know what building it is that he blew up? Maybe we're supposed to know, and next episode will probably clarify it more, but I'm like, what other building would he have a reason to blow up? I'm just like, I guess it would have to be one of those companies that like has a lot of Chinese labor. I guess would probably be one of the things he's aiming for. I'm like, that's the only way I can explain like what business he would kind of end up blowing up. So we'll have to wait and see on that front. I did think it's interesting, once again, Merryweather's poking around trying to buy up the business from Penelope, as she won't bite. And obviously some of her workers were beat up. And it's like, oh, you need a security firm. And I'm curious, is she going to try and turn to Assam for this? It's like, right, it'll be a source of money. It's like, well, would you really go as far as getting a Tong involved to be your security? Or would you just like try and hire Assam separate from the Tong? And it's like, I don't know if you could necessarily separate the two. I mean, that would also put him in like direct line of, I mean, him and Leary are already going to be gunning for each other regardless, because he was like, I hope you do find me when you go looking for me. So working for Penelope would make that a lot easier. So we'll see whether that, cause the moment it's like, oh, do you need like a security firm? He's like, oh, you've already hired a security firm, right? Assam immediately came to my mind, but I don't know if that's something she'd even go down that route with where they currently stand. She probably doesn't feel the right or feel like it's appropriate to ask. We'll have to wait and see, but that's immediately what came to my mind. But because of the way Penelope is running things, it comes in complete conflict with the mayor, because it makes him seem like a hypocrite when he's trying to keep his neutrality and his wife is leaning on Chinese labor, because that's going to make the Irish vote not want to go his way. But he tried to placate things. He tried to placate all the Irish workers while also placating the powerful people and business people who use Chinese labor, who need that Chinese labor. So that kind of skews things for him. But Penelope's kind of like, yeah, his business is his business, this is mine. He has no say in it, but it affects him politically, so that's going to be an issue. And Buckley's wanting to deal with it. he picked up a lady of the night, and I don't know if that was for his own personal proclivities or was she supposed to serve some other purpose. It was just a couple second scene of like he wanted someone specific. So I'm like, I don't know what that's about. It almost seems like he's human at the end of the day, so he might have his proclivities, but it just feels like he's so wound up tight with all that he's planning and his machinations that he wouldn't have time for sex. But it's like, I guess everyone across the board needs to bust a nut, right? So I don't know if that's just, I don't know if, like I said, he's got something sinister planned with that or not. That was just, I don't know if that's what that thread's going to lead to or not. Not unless because it's like the mayor's got his proclivities, his very specific like taste. So I was curious, was it going to be a thing of what's he going to try and use that against the mayor? But I'm like, I don't think that's going to work. But like I said, we'll have to wait to see what Buckley's really got in mind. And tying back into the conversation earlier about the molasses, Assam kind of suggests to Young June, like, hey, let's go find a source of our own. It's like without Father June's permission, because as I brought up before, that's going to cause them to, like I said, whether it's this season or whether it gets fully pushed into next season, but it's going to lead to them having conflict with the 6 companies, especially because Assam tried to go to Chow for this, and Chow was like, this is a perfectly delicate balance that you're about to completely like fuck the tongs on in general. Like, you will be their downfall if you go down this route. It seems like the person he goes to in the end is Vega, because Vega ends up being the person she kind of saw through, like, hey, no one ever comes to these pit fights because they're doing great. It's usually they're running from something or dealing with something. So she knew that Assam probably lost in it pretty badly. So, but she likes him and is willing to help, which I feel like Vega seems like she might be a dangerous situation, a powder keg ready to explode. It's just, Assam is kind of setting a lot of fires, even in this first episode. At the very least, let's just say, like, he's setting up a lot of, like, powder kegs, and he hasn't quite lit all of them yet, but he's got the burning matches in his hand ready to light them at any moment. It's going to turn into an absolute clusterfuck, I'm sure, and it's going to all kind of revolve around Assam, but like how he decides to move, how he decides to operate, his motivations behind his choices, especially because it's like, right, Father June's not going to be too happy when he finds out about what they've done behind his back, but this season might lean into Young June's taking the throne from his father. But like I said, how that plays out in contrast with like the 6 companies in China. This is just a lot in the season premiere. A lot of threads they've continued from last season, but also set up and seeing how they play out and flow throughout the rest of the season, starting with next episode. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.